when I start from the end, actually, I hope that in future there is eye tracking in all augmented reality systems. That's what this whole talk is about. We have been doing eye tracking research for quite a long time with many partners. We had researchers developing gaze tracking systems in Honeywell cockpits. So next time when you fly your jet from Europe to United States, you will perhaps not even notice that the pilots are being tracked in terms, for instance, of their mental workload. There is the eye tracking being used. We have had people working in Microsoft research to track the programmers' emotions using gaze tracking. And we have been doing research also with the surgeons, for instance, at the Kuopio University Hospital. What I'm going to talk about today is more about eye-hand coordination and how the knowledge of that could be used to improve the operation of forest machines. You may not realize it, but when you do these small things like stitching a hole, there is a very delicate coordination of eye and hand. And it takes years and years of practice to do this right. Then if we move to a little more delicate suturing, it takes about 6 years to become a certified boat neurosurgeon. And a lot of that actually is a fine motoric skill and eye-hand coordination. In order to be able to track somebody's eyes, we need to position a sensor somewhere in front of the eye, and we need some other fixed point, and this is usually done by an invisible light that's pointed to somebody's eye. So far, most of these devices are very, very expensive, typically used in labs, cost maybe about 20,000-30,000, but there is actually already a new wave of future eye tracking that's going to be much more accessible, and that's why it could be embedded to end-user devices or to augmented reality. And we are actually a part of that as well. So nowadays we are somewhere here, a kind of a massive eye tracker standing in front of a user, and hopefully, and this is already, we can see already today, there will be eye tracker in many or all of the end-user devices because of the information it can bring and because of the new types of user experiences that we can build when we know where the user is looking at. So this is kind of the current form that is being put on somebody's eyes, and hopefully there will be more of these accessible. So when you apply an eye tracker, typically you get this kind of information. You get to know where somebody is not looking, for instance. So if you would be the advertising agency, you would not be very happy about these results. But this is some kind of this is an example of information that we can bring with an eye tracker. When we apply it for more critical situations, we learn that gaze is proactive. That means that it's always ahead of the action. So when you want to do something, very typically your eyes are a little ahead, and we can use that information to understand how people who are new to the task compared to the experts. So the experts typically have a lot of these proactive strategies. They would look ahead, they know what to look at, and the novices or the ones that poorly perform, they don't do it. This is an example from, I'm sorry for the quality of the image here, an example of one of our research with the neurosurgeons showing that the experts actually really know what to look at, and we can capture that information and then use it, for instance, for intelligent purposes. So I hope that I will show you in a while that there is a lot of that eye tracking or gaze tracking can provide for machine operator or forest machine operators. As you can see from here, this is from a harvester. It's a really, really demanding work. A lot of eye-hand coordination. So there is a possibility to actually improve performance, efficiency through some knowledge. Well, GAZE has really a lot to offer. It's a great cue for learning. So when we show somebody how an expert is going about the task, we can visualize the GAZE, then their performance is improved. This is, for instance, from radiology. But also, it's a biodata. It's a very rich source of data. We can collect it in real time, and we can learn a lot about the operator. So, for instance, the curve there on the top is almost a direct proxy to somebody's cognitive workload, how difficult the task was. The task here was just pointing a pen from one side of a paper to another, and we can see what it does with somebody's mental processing. Well, if we look into forestry machine cockpits, there is a lot of visual information processing. There is a lot of eye-hand coordination. There is a lot of awareness about where you are. There is a lot of decision making, and that's exactly where we would like to bring this technology to improve the operators. When we look at recent research, again, to bring some evidence from the field, there is even a 40% difference between operators of the same machine. So this has been collected with the real pros, and even within that group, there is a 40% performance difference. That means that actually the limits of the machines are already there. There is not much of the improvement that we could provide by maybe having a more efficient engine, but there is a lot of potential in the operator training. So what I try to say is that productivity currently mostly depends on the operator skills. And when we look at the operator skills, the two of the most important are motoric and eye-hand coordination. And there we actually find a lot of differences and a lot of potential. So let's have a look at what's going on in a forwarder driver's head, forwarder the machine that brings the logs from the forest. This is a combined video that we made a year ago, and this is not yet from a real forest. I have some examples from later, but on the right you can see that we actually measure all the time the gaze. That's the fast jumping point, and we do some computer vision to find where is the grapple or where is the forwarder head. And from that knowledge, we can actually always see what is the kind of optimal strategy for this task. Typically, I have some breakdown of this in a few slides. So we can break one cycle of loading a log onto the track to a series of sub-strategies that the operator does. And as you can see in this shot, it takes maybe 15 seconds to grab the logs and put them to the loader. There is actually a lot of going on. What is going on? Well, they need to know where is the grapple, where is the logs. Am I already close? No, I'm not close. And again, this goes in the cycle. They need to find the center of the logs. They need to have the logs aligned so they nicely sit in the loader. Again, while bringing the logs up to the loader, there is a coordination of the head. There may be some proactive fixations or where to put those, and so on and so forth. This goes in cycles, and you imagine that this takes only about 12 seconds. This is this is not all, but this is example of decisions that the operator has to do, and you definitely agree that there is a lot for one's head. So then, when we plot, for instance, the distance between the head and the gaze, we can see that there are some patterns that are learned as you become the pro, but sometimes it doesn't work very well. When we go a little closer, we can even go to the different phases of this task and see what is happening during, for instance, these 16 seconds. That there are these proactive fixations proactive gaze goes to different targets as the cycle proceeds, and we can actually learn a lot from where the gaze should be, and we can train for that. So then compared to another cycle which was not that successful, you can see that there's already a 4 seconds difference over there. Typically there is about 60 of these cycles, so one guy can do this stuff in 16 minutes while the other can do it in 20 minutes, and there is where the possibility for performance improvements is. So even if we would save very little from the price per cubic meter of the forest being collected last year in Finland, maybe by training for better gaze strategies, there would be very significant improvements. So there are a few potentials of gaze for the future machines. As you can already guess, some of those are in the training. We can embed intelligent gaze tracking to the simulators that are currently in use, and also bring explicit learning of the gaze strategies to the training of the forest machine operators. But there's even more in the field and in the industry. So in future, definitely we are going to see, as already Antti has shown us earlier, we are definitely going to see augmented reality, mixed reality systems, and in those there is a huge potential for gaze tracking. We can do already some tracking of the gaze in the simulators and in the forest machines. This is an example from the real forest, and well, there is still a few steps that need to be taken, like to, for instance, develop intelligent or more intelligent machine vision, more ergonomic tracking, and so on. But I think that the path is definitely clear. When there will be AR, MR systems in the cockpits, well, I don't know yet. We are just now embedding gaze tracking to an office environment type of MR systems. So I hope that we can, maybe through this talk, we can also get more collaboration to build these systems. So 2 messages to take home from here. Proactive gaze is very important, and hopefully very soon there will be systems that are able to track that in the forest machine operators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roman. So, do we have questions? Maybe we have here some forest machine companies. Maybe they have some comments or question related to this eye tracking. I think that this is a very good example how photonics is possible to use in different ways. For example, this forest industry. So it could be the visualization, like AR, or technology to measurements, so like eye tracking. So you point out that there could be very much difference between the, how to say, good driver and a not so experienced driver.
Yes.
So, and this research is ongoing.
Yeah. This is a part of a larger project, and which try to understand the role of gaze in very demanding situations like this.
So, can you describe those challenges, what you are now trying to solve or understand?
Yeah. Well, certainly there is a technological challenge, which means embedding some way of gaze tracking to the cockpits. Which means, because we are suddenly moving out from the labs to the real environments, we need to have robustness, we need to have ergonomics in place, we need to have some way to process the data out there, and so on. So that's one of the things that we are actually solving right now. So technology background for that, more robust vision systems, and so on.
So I need to ask also that how open-minded these drivers are starting that kind of research?
They are very open-minded, because when you sit 8 hours in the cockpit, your back is really aching. So then some kind of researchers moving around the machine, they are very nice excitement and break for the day. So we have been only in good relations with our participants.
Is there any other solution or application, just education and understanding the
Well,
efficiency?
I really think that we are on the way to make a real-time intelligent decision support system. So actually we can, in real time, guide attention to certain areas, to certain places. We can recognize, we can give direct feedback to the driver where he has been spending extra time and so on. So this is not only really for training, but I think there's a huge potential for real industrial applications.
Did I understood right that you are able to give live instructions for the driver, for example, when you have the harvesting ongoing, that now you should pick up that tree?
Yes.
And that tree. No,
Yes.
how quickly you are able to process the data, so from the view?
Well, it's hard to say at the moment what all data would need to be processed for that kind of decision support, but we can mostly do this in real time, on the fly.
Any other comments or questions?
Maybe a comment. So these examples you had from forest machines, they were from forwarder, which is
Yes.
quite more simple work compared to harvester operators' work. So I would assume that harvester operator has much more decisions to make, for example, for what trees to select for cutting, and this is a lot more workload. It's not so
Yes.
monotonic and maybe not so they are not repeating so much the same things, but they have to do really lots of different decisions, and I believe that you probably have lots of possibilities to use this data for supporting the decision making, and especially training to look at the right things in the forest.
Yeah, thank you. I deliberately actually took away the part that we have about the harvesters. We have done data collections as well. It's true that it's even more intensive. We can see from the behaviors, from the workload measurements of the drivers that they go through much more decision, the quality, the length, where to move next, and so on. In that way, it's actually more monotonic, and what we have seen, they are much more mentally tired after the shift. The thing is that they also don't have natural breaks in the work. When you drive a forwarder, you do loading and unloading, which provides some kind of change to the task. The harvester can spend 8 hours on doing this very tough decision making. So, according to their own words, they are really flushed at the end of the shift.
Yes, Jukka Kurkinen from Kesla. Our machines are used, for example, in plantation environment where you actually take everything off. So, do you see that as an application area for this kind of technology?
What does it mean, everything off?
I mean, plantation, you don't select the trees. You just it's like a cropping the harvest from the field. It's more
Yes.
like that kind of stuff.
Yes, I think there is still a lot of potential. We can, as I said, we can monitor the quality of the work in real time. So we can, for instance, know whether there is a lot of fatigue of the driver, which means that there is perhaps a good time for a break, to take a sandwich, and then go back to the performance levels as you would be suboptimal without the break. So there is also that kind of stuff that can be used even in more kind of mechanic work.